Hi guys, Hot Mama Janelle here on the blog today. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about drop shadows. I've seen a lot of people who don't even use drop shadows, or they use them inconsistently. Sometimes they'll have them on their pages and sometimes they won't. And sometimes some objects will have them and others won't. And I think they're really missing out on something that can add a lot of depth and realism to your digital pages. So I wanted to show you today. I've got this layout here made with Tracy Reed's Grace Under Fire, and I really like the layout and the composition, but as you can see, this page is completely and totally flat. There are no shadows to it at all. So this is how I have seen some pages, and even though the composition is nice, they've got some clusters in there, it just doesn't feel, it's really missing something, isn't it? It's missing the shadows, it's missing the depth. So I want to just run through a couple of examples here. Now this one is the same exact layout, and it's just using the default Photoshop drop shadow, and it's applied to every layer except for my text and my paint. So you can see I'm going to switch back and forth here. So there's no shadows, and there's the default shadow applied the same shadow to every single layer. And it gives it a little bit, it does give it a little something, but I want to show you what I have done when I've gone in and tweaked each of the drop shadows within each layer. And you can see it feels so much more real now. It really jumps off the page. I've got a lot of depth here in my flowers and under my leaves, and you can see that my layers just feel like they're really popping. I love my title down here as opposed to flat, default, and playing with it on your own. So I really encourage you to go in and use your drop shadows and to figure out what really works for you, what you like best, what you think looks most realistic, because what looks realistic to you may not look realistic to somebody else. And these are your pages, they're going to be in your family photos, your albums. You want to make sure that you're liking what you're doing. So we're going to go ahead now and look at a couple of my different layers so you can see some of my shadow settings, and I'm going to show you how to make your own styles so that you can just go back to them really easily. Now when I go in and create a page, I don't set this shadow and then click the next layer and set this shadow and then click the next layer and set this shadow. I have all my styles all set up here that I use and I go to. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing here, let's look at my paper shadow. All right. So we're looking at this green floral paper right here. You can see the shadow along the edge. And these are my drop shadow settings. So I'm set to a linear burn on the blend mode. My opacity is 60%, and then the angle will vary. I use 45 degrees on all of my shadowing. I've also seen them at 120. It's up to you. Just make sure that you use the same angle across the board unless you're really getting into it and playing with different lighting options, which I usually don't do anything with that. So, and the distance is set at 20, the spread is at 0, and the size is at 21. So a jumping point for you, if you decide that you like the way that my papers are shadowed, this would be a good place for you to start. And you can see you can play with the distance. It's getting smaller, the shadow's getting more spread. Just play with it. Find out what you like and what you think looks real to you. Now once you've got your shadow set the way that you want it, you really are happy with how it looks, with your size, and again, don't forget to play with your opacity. There are so many tools in here that are underutilized. So now let's say this is the shadow that I've got. I really like this setting and I would like to apply it to all of my papers. I'm going to go over here and click this new style, and you can even see it helps you create a new preset from the current settings. So I'm going to click new style, and then you can name it, and I'm just going to name it paper shadow, and then I will say okay, and I'm going to go ahead and say okay here. And then, sorry, I have a lot of styles, but when you go to the very bottom, you can see now here is your paper shadow. So you could click a layer that you wanted to take on that property, and I'm actually going to go to one of these so you can see it a little differently. I'm going to click this one and give it that new shadow, and you can see just from there to there, back, forth that it really gave it a nice difference. So let's go back here, and I'm gonna pull up one of my flowers now so we can take a look at how I've shadowed this. Okay, drop shadow settings. So for the flower, again at linear burn, and my opacity is at 22% this time. It's a lot less than the paper, and I do that because a flower isn't, it's not flat and it's not all the same dimensions. So the way that your shadow falls isn't going to be as harsh as a piece of paper. Again, my angle is still at 45 degrees. You'll see that on every one of my shadows. And then my distance here is a lot more than the paper. This one was 53, which I think the paper was 20. It was in the 20s. And then the size is about double. Again, I think the paper was in the 20s and now we're in the 40s. So there's my shadow for my flower. And you can see, again, just play with it. Yeah, and see that's not quite what I want, but I like that. Yeah, and again, you could go, and once you've got the shadow that you like, and I would call that a large shadow, a large flower shadow. So I would click New Style, name it Large Flower Shadow, and say OK. And then let's go back here and let's give that shadow. And here it is right here. If you hover over it, it will tell you what you just named it, Large Flower Shadow. And I'm going to go ahead and apply that to some of my flowers here. Okay. There's another one. I almost missed one. Yeah. So from here, and you can see with those shadows on the flowers, it is starting to add depth and dimension. It's looking better, but there's still a lot of work to be done on this page. So anyways, you saw a paper style, you saw a flower style. With your smaller flowers, I just tend to make them a little smaller. Again, it's all about playing and what feels right to you. So I hope you enjoyed this little mini insight on shadows, and I hope it encourages you to play with your shadows and figure out what you like and what works for you and looks real for you. I am going to include some amazing pages in the article who are done by some awesome scrappers, and their shadowing techniques are just amazing. So I encourage you to take a look at them, be inspired, pull up a page, pull up your own page, start playing with the shadows, go back and forth, look at them, see how they do their shadows, and if it inspires you, then there's no sense in not trying to take it on. So good luck, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.